Hello, welcome back to the reading of the Timeline of Mary-Beaumont. If you haven't listened to the last ones, we did chapters 1, 2 and 3, so make sure to go back to that so you're all caught up with everything. Okay. Chapter 4, The Remains of Catherine Coltrane, 1891 to 1911. 1891. 2nd of January. The Yorkshire police intercept and call a halt to the growing Yorkshire mob. They also convince the mayor, Joseph Agar, to call off the search parties for Catherine Coltrane, saying he or any of those involved in the searching/lynching parties will not face legal action or jail time if they stop searching. Catherine was never seen again. Joseph Agar and Catherine's husband, David Carlisle, would deny that they or the mob ever found Catherine Coltrane. Rumours swirled around that she had made it as far as Edinburgh, but others claimed that they heard wails and screaming coming from the Yorkshire moors from the time around the search. In Henry Coltrane's book, he speculates whether the mob found Catherine days prior to January 2nd and killed her and hid her body in the moors or another location. Henry wonders if they only continued to look for Catherine to put on a performance to authorities and avoid any possible prison time for inciting a mob to kill her. The reason Henry believes this is one local at a pub drunkenly confessing that, and I quote, "Someone definitely found her. Yeah, we had to chug along." No body was ever found, even to this day. In fact, to this day, historians and authorities are unclear on what happened to Catherine Coltrane. Her story has grown to much more relevance than the story of her daughter, Sister Mary-Beaumont, due to how well reported and documented it was at the time. Numerous books and articles exist on Catherine, and she has become a strong inspiration for the LGBTQ+ community in recent years. There is a memorial to her in the graveyard behind Blake Dean Scout Hut. In recent years, the graveyard has been tended and well kept due to the importance of Catherine Coltrane to the LGBTQ+ community. 29th of January. Joseph Agar finishes his tenure as Lord Mayor of York and would never return to the position. John Close would replace him this year and try to sweep the ordeal under the rug and restore calm in Hebden Bridge. Henry remained quiet throughout the year of 1891, and he became a point of discussion and gossip around Hebden Bridge. He worked at a pub in order to gain a significant sum of money to move out of the town. Gertrude Agar remained relatively unscathed from the scandal and would continue her private education in English literature and her love for reading and writing. Numerous poems were written from 1891 to 1900 from Gertrude that historians believe allude to her relationship with Catherine. Throughout 1891, Sister Mary-Beaumont would nurse and care for the child as her own. 29th of December. As Sister Mary Bernadette could not celebrate the child's actual birthday, she decides that her birth date should be recognised on her arrival at the Hebden Bridge convent. Anecdotes say to celebrate 1 year with the child, the sisters would partake with some fun games in the convent's garden. 1892. January. After losing his father and sister in the same year and having earned enough money at the local pub, age 25, Henry Coltrane leaves the Hebden Bridge area and his family home. He describes the farewell with his mother as harsh and matter-of-fact. In his older years, he wonders if he should have been more loving to his mother in the year of 1891, but he never has forgiven his mother for her treatment of Catherine. He moves into a small one-bedroom house in the run-down factory town of Salford in Greater Manchester. The house was rat-infested, and he practically lived in a disease-riddled slum. He would later describe Salford as a, and I quote, shithole, but does not regret leaving Hebden Bridge. He worked at a textile factory as a wool driver, where every working day he would drive to and fro from factories, delivering wool to markets. He would continue this job for another 3 years. March. Henry Coltrane meets a woman named Eleanor Bruce at a pub after his friend introduces her to him. They quickly become enamoured with each other and start to court that month. Summer. Rumblings around Hebden Bridge circulate about the state of Mary Coltrane, Catherine's mother, as she has become a bit of a recluse in her farmhouse and has not been seen in months. She would continue her isolation into the new year, and would only have brief, cold conversations with old friends or even family members. 30th of July. A girl named Beatrice Hornsby is born in a small town called Skipton. The family lived in a small farm outside of town. She was the second daughter of Emily and William Hornsby, aged 34 and 37, and she had 4 siblings. The first daughter had died 2 years prior. September. Gertrude Agar would leave Hebden Bridge to study English literature at Royal Holloway in Surrey. She eventually became a well-regarded novelist, with certain books such as Beauty and Damnation standing alongside Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, being touted as classics of English literature. December. As the child, now given the singular name of Mary, was turning 2 this month, there were discussions amongst the nuns about how long they would keep this child and whether they should give the child to an orphanage. Sister Mary Bernadette would argue against this, claiming that it is their duty to the Lord to take care of this child, and if this responsibility was thrust upon them, they must commit to raising Mary as their own. This was apparently not the last debate about keeping Mary, but Sister Mary Bernadette would always seek to keep her safe within the walls of the convent. 1893, 7th of April, Mary Coltrane, after over a year of being recluse, reportedly turns up to a pub at Hebden Bridge and confronts David Carlyle. After a hostile argument, she smashes a beer bottle over David's head and would repeatedly call him a murderer. She was soon found guilty of inflicting bodily injury. She was soon found guilty of inflicting bodily injury with or without a weapon and was sentenced to 5 years of prison in the female prison in York. 1894. February. Henry proposes to Eleanor Bruce, and she willingly accepts. However, they both agree they must earn more money and move somewhere else before marriage. 1895. Henry Coltrane and Eleanor Bruce decide to leave Salford for a better place to settle and raise a family. They move to the small town of Bakewell in Derbyshire, in a small but cosy townhouse. June. Henry manages to get work at a local bookshop as an assistant. August. As Henry now has a stable job, Henry and Eleanor start to arrange their wedding, which would mostly consist of friends from Salford and Eleanor's family. Henry tries to write to his mother, but receives word she is in prison for physical assault and battery. He decides not to visit her. 1896, 11th of July. Henry and Eleanor are married at Our Lady of Sorrows Roman Catholic Church in Bamford. The wedding is a joyous success, and Henry claims that it was the happiest day of his life. Eleanor is now referred to as Eleanor Coltrane, and the two start to try and have a child. 1897, 3rd of March. Mary Coltrane is released early on good behaviour and is allowed to return to Hebden Bridge. She starts being friendly to the locals once again. She reportedly makes numerous visits to Hebden Bridge Church and has turned to becoming a Protestant. Until her death, the Hebden Bridge priests claim that she made regular efforts to support the local community, donate to charity, and become a kind of woman of faith. Locals would praise how she had become a far cry from the crazed evangelical Catholic that she once was. However, Henry claims she made no attempts to reach out before, within, or after prison. 18th of June. Eleanor Coltrane gives birth to her son, Michael Coltrane. 1898. When Beatrice turned 6, her and her brothers would all sleep outside of the house, in the barn house with the animals. Her father would do this, as this was how his own father treated him. He believed sending out the children to sleep amongst the animals would toughen them up. Florence claims that this in fact made her kinder, and she dearly loved her brothers and the animals she was raised amongst. At this age, Beatrice found pleasure in drawing and rudimentary painting, an activity that followed her into her teenage years. Her mother and father would sleep sweetly in the farmhouse as their children toughed it outside. They claimed when they came of age, 18, they could sleep under the same roof. 1899, 6th of March. Eleanor Coltrane gives birth to a second child, Clara Coltrane. Some of the other sisters in Hebden Bridge Convent are concerned about how close and motherly Mary Bernadette is towards Mary. If Mary is to stay, then she must be given tasks and essentially treated as a servant to the sisters. This suggestion was given in order to make sure Mary Bernadette is focusing her duties onto God instead of the child. She obliges, and Mary willingly takes up chores around the convent. 1900. 16th of April. David Carlyle is arrested for drunken battery, but is discharged that night with a slight slap of the wrist. Apparently, there are numerous other cases of David's drunken buffoonery, but this is the only documented arrest. 13th of October. Eleanor Coltrane gives birth to a third child, Catherine Coltrane, in honour of Henry's sister. This child would go by Cathy. All three children would look fondly upon her father and mother and the childhood that they were given. To this day, two families of Coltranes still live in Bakewell. 29th of December. Beatrice would later state that 1900 was the last year the nuns of the convent would celebrate Mary's birthday. Turning 10, the sisters believe it would be appropriate to not indulge further in celebrating this date. 1901. 2nd of August. David Carlisle is found in his farmhouse, dead, aged 52. He had hung himself from a noose and his body was found approximately 5 days after the suicide. The suicide note ended with the phrase, "She keeps tapping on my window. I'm sorry all. David Carlisle." 1902. Other sisters in the convent start to notice something odd about Mary, now 11. Suspicions had been raised over the last few years about how Mary is growing, but the start of her prepubescent years makes them consider if she was assigned male at birth, or had a cursed birth. They make their suspicions aware to Sister Mary Bernadette and other elder nuns in the convent. Mary Bernadette claims that no matter how the child ages, it is their job as Poor Clares to take care of her as equals. She makes sure to hold the ideals of Clare of Assisi to her heart to care for Mary. The Reverend Mother agrees with Sister Mary Bernadette and would treat her with respect over her sense of duty in the years. 1903. Over the next few years, Mary would be mocked by younger nuns and ignored by some. Only Sister Mary Bernadette and the current Reverend Mother would smile kindly upon her. She was confused about her body and voice in these years, and whenever she would raise these concerns to Mary Bernadette, she would be ignored or told not to dwell on it. A severe inferiority complex started to form in Mary as she started to remain in the shadows of the convent, where she focuses on her chores and work. 1904. Aged 11, Beatrice would be expelled from her local school for fighting a boy on the playground. The boy had reportedly pulled another girl's pigtails, and Beatrice would respond by punching the child in the face, pushing him to the ground and bloodying him up a bit. Local authorities were informed of this ordeal, who recommended that Beatrice should move quietly to another school in Keighley. Beatrice claims that her dad seemed slightly kinder to her after this day, and wonders if this one act of violence in her childhood made her the favourite child for a short time. 1905. Early winter. Beatrice would later claim that this was the year that facial hair perplexed Mary. Mary was confused why she was growing more facial hair than others, and Sister Mary Bernadette told her it was quite natural in some, and that she would just have to shave regularly, out of purity. Sister Mary Bernadette would visit town, buy a shaving kit for her, and then advise her not to tell the other sisters, as Mary had an extremely limited interaction with other men. She was unsure of what gender she was originally assigned at birth. This specific story was disclosed from an elderly Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette to Beatrice Hornsby, after Beatrice Hornsby returned from Italy. Beatrice claims that Mary Bernadette had a few memory difficulties, so take this anecdotal account and other stories from Mary Bernadette with a pinch of salt. In the same year, the owner of a Bakewell bookshop decides to retire and passes on ownership to the store to Henry Coltrane. He renamed the Bakewell bookshop into the Beaumont Bookshop, based on his mother's maiden name and his sister's nun name. The Beaumont Bookshop remains in Bakewell to this day, still ran by the Coltrane family. It has grown in popularity in recent years after the growing popularity on Catherine and Mary Beaumont's stories. 1907. Aged 50, Sister Mary Bernadette becomes the Reverend Mother, after one of the older Reverend Mothers of the Hebden Bridge Convent passes away. She is voted by the sisters as the new abbess of the Hebden Bridge Convent, and is now known as Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette. 2nd of December, Isabella Hornsby, her real last name is unknown, is born to a woman named Sophia, whose real last name is also unknown, somewhere outside of Florence, Italy. This seems quite separate to what we're going to at the moment, but it does come back. Just remember Isabella and Sophia, because they're going to come back to play later in the timeline. 1908. Now aged 17, the Reverend Mother and other fellow sisters agree to allow Mary, the single given name of the child left at the doorsteps, to undergo a postulancy period. Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette gives her the name Sister Mary-Beaumont. Other young and old nuns would frown upon this decision, but Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette would still smile kindly upon her and would tell other nuns to treat her as a fellow sister, despite their reservations. August, a nun, Sister Maria Piccini, joins the Basilica di Santa Chiara convent in Assisi, age 19. She became a postulate on her own will, wanting to find love through God and meaning in her life. Again, sounds completely unrelated going to Italy. It will come back. 1909, age 16, Beatrice meets a girl named Alice Woodhatch, the local parish church. She becomes enamoured with Alice and realises that she is only sexually attracted to women. The two get closer in the year, and Beatrice remembers being asked personal, slightly uncomfortable questions about the two of them from her own father. 1910, age 19, Sister Mary-Beaumont takes her initial temporary vows and becomes a novice nun. She would never advance much further. 1911, 11th of September, Mary Coltrane dies from pneumonia in her cousin's house, aged 71. Henry Coltrane is informed of this and makes a trip back to Hebden Bridge to pay his respects. It was only then that he heard stories of his mother's change of heart from her evangelical ways and how she became a softer woman. He wishes that she could have told him that herself, and doesn't understand why she would never write to him if she had truly become a new woman of love and affection. Henry Coltrane would later lament in life that if he did remain in Hebden Bridge for most of his life, then he imagines he would have died amongst the rest of his family. 20th of October, the funeral of Mary Coltrane occurs. Henry brings his family along to his mother's funeral and claims that it felt like the whole town turned up. He claims that he was distracted throughout the sermon by a reoccurring tap at the window. He was disturbed after eventually reading David Carlyle's suicide note, which also mentioned a tapping at his window. Henry Coltrane would later quote this. I am not a superstitious man. I do not succumb to fears of the paranormal nor macabre. But the note made my blood curdle. Was she a real spirit, out to torment me? Or was she a figment of a grief-stricken mind? Or could it be that she was still alive? How could she possibly still be alive? He later said this in 1921. And that is the end of the chapter. Chapter 5. The Passage of Sister Mary-Beaumont. This chapter is set entirely in the year 1912. And before I get into it, if for those that have seen the short film Sister Apostate, there are some differences between this chapter of the story and the film, as when writing I had to simplify things. And it's a very complicated story and it was quite hard to adapt, but this is the true story supposedly of what happened when Mary Beaumont and Sister Florence met. So just throwing that out there before we get into it. 1912, the 12th of April. Alice tells Beatrice that she and her family are leaving to Newcastle in the next month. Beatrice Hornsby hastily confesses her feelings for Alice Woodhatch. Alice was reportedly shocked by this and didn't say much to her on the walk back home. 13th of April. Word of mouth spreads around Skipton that Beatrice is a lesbian. Shock and horror emerge from the religious communities of the town. The same day, Emily and William Hornsby hear of the rumours. They are aggressive and confront Beatrice. She tearfully confesses and is severely beaten by her father. Over the night, Beatrice Hornsby claims her mother and father would stay up all night discussing what to do with her. 14th of April. A group of evangelical Protestants gather at Skipton Town Hall, who use Beatrice as a scapegoat to show the Hornsby family of Skipton as a group of sinners that must be moved out of town. 15th of April. The Protestants gather outside of the Hornsby farm and would chant and boo the household for hours. Eventually, William Hornsby would come out of the farm and apologises for the devil inside of his daughter and the fear she has created. He claims he will rid her of sin by sending her to a convent. Beatrice watched this confrontation from the barn house, and she would state that it was the first time she heard that she was going to a convent. Mid-April, William and Emily Hornsby would have regular meetings with the priest of St. Stephen's Parish Church and the town mayor of Skipton about sending her away to the Hebden Bridge convent in order to rid this supposed demon from within her. 27th of April, Beatrice joins the Hebden Bridge convent as a new postulate, aged 19. Her new name is Sister Florence. As she moves in, she is warmly greeted by the Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette, who then introduces her to Sister Mary-Beaumont, now aged 21. Sister Florence would claim there was immediate sparks as Sister Mary-Beaumont showed her to her room. After their meeting, Sister Mary-Beaumont and Sister Florence would spend much more time with each other over the coming months. Beatrice claims that Sister Mary-Beaumont was very shy initially and didn't want to spend too much time with her, but after a few weeks, Mary-Beaumont had already opened up to her. Early May to mid-August, Sister Florence was quite a troublesome postulate and would often get on the bad side of the Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette and the other elder nuns. Many thought she was a bad influence on Sister Mary-Beaumont, who cherished her presence, even if it meant she was neglecting her heavenly duties. Late August, Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette is fearful of the two's relationship, worrying it has turned romantic. She would ask Sister Mary-Beaumont to be cautious of Sister Florence and to stop seeing her as much. Beatrice would report that in the same night, they would sneak out. Mary-Beaumont told her that she had only left the convent a few times very briefly, tied to Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette's side. Sister Florence still insists she should come along, and the two wandered into the Yorkshire moors for the night. At a bridge near the Blake Dean parish, Beatrice claims that the two kissed and embraced there. After she convinced Sister Mary-Beaumont to steal the letter from Catherine Coltrane that Mary-Beaumont arrived with at the convent. Mary-Beaumont was unsure how revealing the true letter about who her birth mother really was would help anything. Beatrice claimed she comforted her and that they would plan to sneak into the Reverend Mother's office the next day to find the letter. The next day, Sister Mary-Beaumont and Sister Florence would sneak into the Reverend Mother's private office and would find the original letter that Catherine put in Mary-Beaumont's basket when she arrived. Beatrice claims that she was surprised years later to hear how secretive the original letter was to Reverend Mother, as it was simply sat on top of the desk in the open. Beatrice wonders if the Reverend Mother might have reminisced about Catherine and left it on the desk, unaware others might scoop it up soon after. Sister Mary-Beaumont read through the letter, which apparently broke her heart. It revealed that she was indeed assigned male at birth. Her mother had a relationship with Mary Bernadette and is now likely dead from the mob. It also revealed that the Reverend Mother took her in for protection from the rest of the world, and pieces together that she was castrated so she could live amongst the nuns for protection. Sister Florence would then comfort Sister Mary-Beaumont, and Beatrice recounts that the second she kissed, that the Reverend Mother stepped in. The Reverend Mother discussed the love affair between the two with other senior nuns. They all came to the agreement that Sister Florence should be moved to another convent, while Sister Mary-Beaumont would have to seek penance in her prayer from now on. Reverend Mother would later confirm to Beatrice that she was the one that suggested that Beatrice should not be simply moved to another Poor Clare convent in the UK or Ireland, but instead recommended to move her even further, all the way overseas to Italy. This was in order to drastically separate the two, to avoid chance of them ever reconnecting. She also wanted to try and save Sister Florence's soul by taking her to the roots of the Poor Clares, so she can feel as close to God as possible. 2nd of September. Reverend Mother writes to the convent in Darlington, inviting the Reverend Mother of the Darlington convent to Hebden Bridge with hopes of contacting the convent in Basilica di Santa Chiara in Assisi. This convent is where the remains of Poor Clare of Assisi and other family members are located. During this time, Sister Florence is told to remain in her chambers in the Hebden Bridge convent, with only limited time outside for prayer and a walk. Sister Florence is moved to new chambers further from Mary Beaumont's chamber to keep the two separated. Beatrice claims over the following days she tried to sneak her way towards Sister Mary Beaumont's chambers, but had been discovered doing so by other sisters and sent back to her chambers. 6th of September. Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette meets with the Reverend Mother Abbess of Darlington, and they have a meeting with other elder nuns in attendance. Beatrice's mother, Emily Hornsby, is also in attendance. Beatrice never saw her mother during this meeting, but Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette did explain that her parents agreed to her exchange to the Assisi convent. Not much is known about this meeting, as Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette never told Beatrice the specifics of her deal. But Beatrice speculates that Reverend Mother Bernadette must have indulged in some tough debate and convincing, as she managed to win over all in attendance to send her to Italy, a rare, strange occurrence for an English convent. Lucy Howell quoted Beatrice Hornsby in an interview, and this interview is used in the novel The Passage of Sister Mary-Beaumont. I'll quote it here. "I cannot fathom how she managed to convince dozens of her sisters, a Reverend Mother from a historic Poor Clares convent, and my own foolish mother to send me to Italy. I am simply perplexed to what was said in that room that made them so hateful of me, so fearful of me. I was one of the few nuns to ever be sent to such a place. She was a remarkably wicked woman to convince that entire room that Mary Beaumont would be safer if I was imprisoned in the tomb of Poor Clare. 7th of September. The Reverend Mother of Darlington writes to the Basilica di Santa Chiara convent. As it would take weeks to arrive and weeks to receive a response, the decision was made to temporarily move Sister Florence to Darlington, so Sister Florence could freely pray for her soul with no restrictions. 8th of September. Sister Florence is moved to the Darlington convent. She said, in an interview with Lucy Howell, "As I stepped onto that horse and carriage, I could hear wailing and crying from the convent. It was as if Mary Beaumont was being murdered." Mid-September. Over the month, Sister Mary Beaumont became tearful and woeful after Sister Florence left. Most of the sisters chose to avoid her during prayer and recreational time, including the Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette. The Reverend Mother would later tell Beatrice that she regrets pulling back from Sister Mary Beaumont, but she couldn't look her in the eyes anymore. She was also surprised that Sister Mary Beaumont never told the other sisters that the Reverend Mother castrated her. Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette told Beatrice that there was no benefit to not telling the other sisters. As if Mary Beaumont told the truth, she would have been asked to leave and would have had the freedom to find Sister Florence in Darlington. She thinks that the only reason she wouldn't tell the other sisters about the castration would be to make sure that the Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette would remain in the Hebden Bridge convent, as she would certainly be exiled from the church if the true letter, was revealed. Late September. Sister Mary Beaumont stopped her frequent crying and became more cold and silent. She disobeyed her vows of obedience by directly refusing her chores and would even miss prayer. 10th of October. Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette and the Reverend Mother Abbess of Darlington both received letters back from the Abbess of Basilica di Santa Chiara, exclaiming that they'd be very happy to reform Sister Florence in their church, and that she can travel via steamboat in London. At the docks, a local from Assisi would greet her to make sure she gets to Rome and travels across Italy safely. The boat will arrive in London on October 30th, and she would arrive in Assisi on November 17th. A note is made that she would also have strict Italian lessons and much stricter prayer hours, but the Mother Superior seems very happy to take in an Englishwoman which has struggled with temptation. 11th of October. The Reverend Mother of Darlington and Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette start to make arrangements for transport from Darlington to London on the 28th. They both agree another nun from the Darlington convent should join Sister Florence in the journey to Assisi to make sure she doesn't run off. Mid-October. After hearing news that transport is underway to Assisi, she begs the Darlington nuns to allow her to say goodbye to Sister Mary Beaumont. She is refused by the nuns and falls silent for the next few days. A few days later, Sister Florence attempts to sneak out and escape from the Darlington convent. She is found by some locals in Darlington and sent back. The Reverend Mother of Darlington punishes Sister Florence by restricting her to only leave her room for communal prayer until she leaves for Italy. The Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette would claim that Sister Mary Beaumont was left mostly in the dark about where Sister Florence was going, as she instructed other nuns to not give any specifics to which convent she was going to. When asked, the other sisters would give vague statements of far away or outside of the country. This would frustrate Sister Mary Beaumont, who became more rebellious to duties that was thrust upon her. Beatrice heard one story from another younger nun who told Mary Beaumont that she wasn't sweeping the hallways fast enough. Sister Mary Beaumont apparently yelled at the other sister and snapped the broom in two. 27th of October. The day before Sister Florence leaves from Darlington to London, one of the elder nuns tells Sister Mary Beaumont that she is being taken to Assisi, Italy. Reverend Mother Bernadette is told of this and is unamused that she has found out. 28th of October. Sister Florence, alongside another Darlington nun, start their commute to London. The same day, Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette has received word that Sister Mary Beaumont is packing her belongings. Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette storms into Sister Mary Beaumont's chamber as she is packing her suitcase. Mary Beaumont damns the convent and says she is leaving in pursuit of Sister Florence. She exclaims that there is no one else in the world that could ever love her, and that she must leave in order to find Florence and find herself. The Reverend Mother asks if she will live as a male or female from now on. Mary-Beaumont responds by saying that she will choose to live as herself. As Sister Mary-Beaumont leaves, she says that she will try to write to the Reverend Mother. Years later, Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette would ponder to Beatrice why she would ever want to write to her. Perhaps she saw the Reverend Mother as her true mother, even in the bitter end. Mary Beaumont left the convent grounds without looking back. She was never seen again. 29th of October. The next day there was a meeting amongst nuns in the Hebden Bridge convent. They asked whether they should request a search team for Sister Mary Beaumont or ask the authorities to make sure she is safe on her journey. Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette refuses this and proclaims that they should let her leave on her own. If rumours of a nun who left her convent in pursuit of another woman were to spread around town, it could lead to her demise. 30th of October. Sister Florence arrives in London with another nun. That day, they meet with a man from Assisi who shows them to their steamboat on the Thames docks. Beatrice claims she tried to escape one last time before boarding her boat, but the burly Italian man swiftly scooped her up and carried her onto the steamboat. The boat was certainly not higher class or fine sailing, it was quite cramped and noisy, but Beatrice claims she enjoyed speaking to people from all over the UK and somewhat lifted her dismal mood. On this boat, one elderly Catholic lady from Northern Ireland befriended Sister Florence on the trip. The elderly Catholic lady told Sister Florence that she planned to stay with family in Rome and hoped to die there, as Rome is where the heart is. Early November, current Lord Mayor of York, Joseph Sykes Rymer, is informed of a young runaway nun who left the Hebden Bridge convent in search of an exiled nun who she fell in love with. Joseph Sykes Rymer notices the similarities between this runaway nun and the similar event with Catherine Coltrane in Hebden Bridge, and wants to avoid another mob. He privately asks the Yorkshire police to investigate the surrounding Hebden Bridge area. Word still gets out, and Sister Mary Beaumont's disappearance causes controversy all over Hebden Bridge. People are angered by another nun that has rejected her vows in pursuit of a woman and are on the lookout for Sister Mary Beaumont. 15th of November. After the long sickly voyage, Sister Florence, the other nun, and the man from Assisi arrive in Rome. After a short roam around the city, Beatrice wishes she could have enjoyed Rome in a, brighter mood. They board a train to Assisi. 17th of November. Sister Florence arrives at the Assisi station. The three of them travel to Basilica di Santa Chiara, where the abbess kindly greets them. The man silently returns to the village. Beatrice was unsure why he took up the trip, as there was no financial compensation. Perhaps he wanted to see London for some odd reason. Beatrice claims she said goodbye to the other nun, whose name she can't remember. Despite all of the conflict and cold exchanges between the two over the trip, the sister still wished her a safe passage before she left the convent and made her way back to the station. The Assisi sisters showed Sister Florence to her room. Beatrice claimed, and I quote, "It was exactly similar to my old room. It was as if, at that instant, I'd returned to Hebden Bridge. All this land, all this water, all that hard effort and labour to move me away from her, and I was back at the same place." End quote. She cried harshly that night, as she knew it would be the first lonely night in the tomb of Clare of Assisi. Mid-November, the Yorkshire police report another group of men who are in search of Sister Mary Beaumont. They don't suspect any potential of foul play from the men, who claim they're trying to get her to safety. But the police officer still reports the interaction, and one of the men in the group is the previous Lord Mayor of York, Joseph Agar, now aged 79. There are no other reports of this group of men, which means they soon called off their search, purposely avoided the police, or they found her. Lucy Howell suspects from this police report that Joseph Agar was involved with the intent of a likely violent interaction with Mary Beaumont, and the police should have been more active to stop the mob. Late November. Not long after Sister Florence had arrived in the Assisi convent, she had taken up Italian classes outside of prayer, taught to her by one of the elder nuns. Beatrice claims that, and I quote, "They were actually quite pleasant. The best thing about being shipped away to Italy was learning Italian. Lovely language." End quote. Mid-December. Yorkshire police find a brown veil in the Yorkshire Dales, by a riverbank not far from Hawes. This is the last definite sign of life of Mary Beaumont. Lucy Howell suspects that from Mary Beaumont's journey up north and past Hawes, that she was indeed heading towards Darlington Convent and perhaps got lost. There is no evidence that she did get to Darlington, and her intention of travel is completely unknown. End of chapter. Chapter 6. The Epilogue of Sister Mary-Beaumont, 1913 to 1914. 1913. Early January, after Christmas, word of Mary Beaumont's disappearance has spread around most of Yorkshire, which has led to people from all over the county claiming to have seen Mary Beaumont. Numerous sightings and people claiming to be her complicates the search, as the police reportedly start to slow their investigation due to a lack of a sign of life of Mary Beaumont. Mid-February, around this time, Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette finds out about the search for Sister Mary-Beaumont that has been going on for months. She later told Beatrice that when she did find out, she was reportedly furious and suspected another nun in Hebden Bridge Convent went behind her back in late October and sent a letter to the mayor. Throughout the year, the Reverend Mother became quieter, as she faced hard guilt in her prayers. Despite how often she was consoled by other nuns that sending Sister Florence away was for the greater good. Late February, after a quiet month with no sign of life of Mary Beaumont, Lord Mayor Joseph Sykes-Rymer gives permission to the Yorkshire Police to stop their search. Joseph Sykes-Rymer delivers a speech in Hebden Bridge Town Hall that they have called off the search, and for all parties interested in searching for her to call off the search. He also reiterates that if Mary Beaumont is ever found, dead or alive, it is important to inform the Yorkshire Police. Around summertime, Sister Florence had become content with convent life in Assisi. She claims that from November 12, 1912, the Italian nuns comforted her and were quite friendly to her despite her frowned-upon sexual orientation. She was allowed to roam around Assisi in her free recreational time, accompanied alongside a few nuns, but the locals were also kind and gracious to her. Beatrice claims the whole town was practically a paradise for nuns, but throughout 1912 she became disassociated from God. Whenever she would pray, it was blank thoughts. The more her sisters would drill in how she could find salvation and forgiveness through him, the more she doubted the Lord. She would consider why he made her this way, why he would split herself and Mary Beaumont up. While she got used to her convent life, she also prayed to Mary Beaumont's safety instead of the Lord. November. Henry, now 47, and Eleanor Coltrane visit Hebden Bridge 2 years after the funeral of his mother, Mary Coltrane. Henry goes to visit his elderly great-aunt and uncle, and whilst visiting the town, an old friend tells him of Mary Beaumont's disappearance in the past year. This disturbs him, due to the reminder of Catherine Coltrane, and inquires with the local council for any possible information on Mary Beaumont, to which they have none. He returns back to Bakewell, and Eleanor convinces him not to dwell on the disappearance of Mary Beaumont. The children are now older, 16, 14, 13, and Henry decides to not chase this strange case any further in order to focus on providing for his children's education. 1914, January. Sister Florence does try to be a more noble nun. She's always on time for prayer, obedient to all her duties, and is a quick learner of Italian, and befriends all of her sisters quite easily. However, despite trying her hardest to pray to the Lord and seek forgiveness, she feels like all of her prayers are going nowhere. The only reason she sticks around the convent from 1913 and throughout most of 1914 because of the fear the other sisters imprinted on her of repentance. As time progressed, she wondered if she needed to even repent for anything she has done since childhood. The question lingered in her thoughts. Is the devil around me, or does the devil surround me? March. Sister Florence confides in Sister Maria Piccini that she plans to leave within the year, perhaps as soon as possible, and she can't shake off Mary Beaumont any more from her prayers. The other nun convinces her to stay until the end of the year to see if time and prayer helps her move on. 10th of April, Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette writes to Reverend Mother of Darlington Convent, asking if she has heard anything about Mary Beaumont lately, as she has heard that her veil was found not far from Darlington, in the town of Hawes, spelled Hawes. She also asks if she has heard any word from Sister Florence from Italy, and how she is doing in Assisi. 17th of April, the Reverend Mother of Darlington sends a letter back claiming that she has heard no word about Mary Beaumont apart from numerous sightings around the area that police claim were falsified. However, she has faith that one of these sightings was indeed Mary Beaumont. Furthermore, the last update in summer 1913 of Florence from Assisi was positive, and she will write again and make note to start sending letters to the Hebden Bridge Convent. May. The Reverend Mothers keep writing to each other and decide to start to meet up with each other about once a month to discuss how the convents are faring, how they can help the local community, and also act as mutual therapy sessions. Late May, the Abbess of Basilica di Santa Chiara receives a letter from the Reverend Mother of Darlington, asking how Sister Florence is doing. She writes back a positive update on how well she has settled. The Abbess then asks Sister Florence if she would like to write back to the Reverend Mothers in England. She refuses, saying she doesn't have anything to say to them. The abbess suggests to Sister Florence that she should forgive the two Reverend Mothers, as perhaps Sister Florence was sent away out of protection and love rather than hate. 28th of June. Archduke Francis Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary is assassinated. Austria-Hungary declared war in Serbia, beginning World War I. 4th of August. Britain declared war in Germany due to their invasion of Belgium. This officially started their involvement in the Great War. August. Antonio Salandra decided that despite Italy's allegiance to the Triple Alliance, that alliance would only be a defensive stance and Italy would remain neutral in the war. This meant that Assisi was still in a safe place for Sister Florence to stay. She wondered whether she should still go despite the war in continental Europe, but decides not to endanger herself for the time being. The Hebden Bridge Convent can't do much to help in wartime, but Reverend Mother Mary Bernadette does offer to Lord Mayor of York, John Bowes Morrell, that they can farm and grow crops for the town if supplies run short. September. The Poor Clares of Arundel start to volunteer to help wounded soldiers and civilians in hospitals around Sussex and locally, such as Arundel and District Hospital. Early October. Sister Maria Piccini asks Sister Florence if she's still contemplating leaving within a year. Sister Florence says that she's considering waiting for the war to finish before leaving, so she can travel to England safely. Sister Maria Piccini says if she doesn't go, she might have to wait an extremely long time. Sister Florence was convinced that it was now or never. Late October, Sister Maria Piccini helps Sister Florence plan a trip back to Britain. As going by ship is off limits from Rome to England, it is safer to make her way by road. Through maps of Europe, Italy and surrounding countries, they plan the safest route through Italy, avoiding conflicting borders, large cities and towns and the coastline. They conclude that she must make her way into neutral Switzerland, towards a town called Lugano. However, after that she will have to make her way across the Alps and then through war-torn France. She must then avoid the border with Central Europe where most of the conflicts are taking place through the trenches. Maria Piccini recommends waiting in Lugano to see where will be the best route through France to the English Channel. November. The pair prepare and plan the trip throughout November, outside of prayer and their duties. They talk with locals about how the war is going and plan every alternative route possible in case Sister Florence runs into trouble. They plan for Sister Florence to leave in the new year, January 1st, as it would be abhorrent for a poor Clare to secretly keep money or stash food and personal belongings for a trip. The pair ask a local baker if he could spare a loaf of bread and some water for that day, and he agrees without asking any questions. December. The last month was quite quiet, as the pair had formulated quite a tight plan of travel for Sister Florence, who had now multiple routes to take through France that might prove safe if not undisturbed. Sister Maria Piccini recommends that Sister Florence must first walk towards her family's home next to Lake Trasimeno, where she can request if she can travel via horse and cart as far as they would like to take her. December 31st. New Year's Eve, during her last supper with the other sisters, Sister Florence stands up and announces to them that she will be leaving the next day and will no longer be a nun. Whilst many of the sisters grumble and beg for her to stay, she argues that she will leave to be reunited with someone that she holds dear. Strangely enough, the abbess of Basilica di Santa Chiara would also stand up and proclaim that all of her sisters will pray for her safety in the expedition, and she must do as she must. She claims that if she ever fears for her soul again, she is always welcome to return to the resting place of Clare. Whilst there were no celebrations that night, Sister Florence would claim all her sisters wished her a safe passage through Europe, and some would claim they'd pray for her soul. Sister Florence wonders if the sisters said that out of kindness, or if they assumed that she was damned to hellfire. She decides to write a diary of her journey, in case she does not live to tell her story. On this day, December 31st, it is her first diary entry, detailing the events in Hebden Bridge that led her to being sent to Italy, and why she must leave to reunite with Sister Mary-Beaumont. It also states the plan for her journey and the dangers that will lie in her expedition for her love. End of chapter.